All right, hey, what's going on, guys? Wanted to quickly encourage you guys with this video. A lot of us right now, if you're like me, we are struggling with time, and that's what I want to encourage you guys with today. And what I mean by struggling with time is oftentimes we are looking at situations not from the perspective of God, but from our own perspective. And for myself, I struggle with that often. I'll look at something and I won't do something with as much urgency as I need. There are other things that I get lazy about and I put off and I don't regard as very, important. And there are other times where I just think I'm, good for tomorrow. I plan and I, do things that I think are going to happen the way I want it to happen. And the Bible addresses time so often. And, even in just that example, Bible in James chapter 4 talks about how a lot of us, we shouldn't be thinking that we're going to go tomorrow and go to such and such a city and that this will happen and that'll happen. But instead that it says that we are just a vapor, a mist that appears for a while and then vanishes. But instead that we should be looking at it from the perspective of if God wills, then, this can happen and that can happen. If he allows it and if he wills it. And many of us, we don't understand that with God's timing, it's obviously very different from our own. And God looks at timing much differently. And the Bible even says that he looks at, like 1,000 years are like a day to him, and for a day, like 1,000 years. And because we don't see it from his perspective and we don't see timing in the way that God wants us to really trust him in, we look at things, we look at man's calendar, we look at things that have, been so cultural to us. We got to go to school for, a certain amount of time until a certain age. You got to go to college for, a certain amount of years, and then you have to graduate, and then you have to get a job and all this stuff, right? You have to get married by a certain age. You got to have some children by a certain time. They got to do certain things by a certain time. And a lot of us want things very quickly, and a lot of us want it in a certain way. But when God looks at it, he looks at things more holistically. He doesn't look at things, even though it's happened to so many other people, even though it's happened to, different, cultural things after such a long amount of time, right? But really God sees it from a different angle, and we don't understand it. We don't really realize it, but because it's his will, it will happen in his timing. And so I just wanted to encourage you, as much as I was reminding myself of how when he opens doors, when he allows things to come to pass, it will happen. But for us to be sitting there in panic, and for us to be worried, for us to be concerned, for us to want confirmation bias for a certain thing to happen, for us to just reach for things from other people, getting affirmation from this and that, really is weakening our faith, weakening our trust in the Lord, when God really wants us to live in freedom, to be abiding in him and just to trust him in whatever it is that's going on in your life. And in due time, as long as you are, praying, and as long as you are living for his kingdom, for his purpose, he will allow certain things to happen. And so many of us right now, we're not doing things in the right perspective and in the right way, right? And so if you have something that God wants you to correct and fix first, similar to how there's that passage of if you have something against a brother and you need to reconcile, the Bible says that you have to stop even before you even give your offering to and lay before the altar. You got to go and reconcile with your brother, right? There are some things where God wants you to take an urgent and very just not so lackadaisical approach to something. For other things, you have to just chill out, right? You have to just chill out, let God work in due timing. Don't be making moves out of, his turn, right? He's going to make the moves for you. He's going to allow certain doors and certain things to open up for you. And because we're so panicked and because we're so concerned about how he's going to work and how things need to be done by a certain time, it's going to ruin, and it's often going to throw things off. And so for many of us, as we look at time, as we look at our watches, as we look at how God's working in the circumstances around us, don't worry. Don't worry that your friends are getting married faster than you. Don't worry that certain things are passing, that months and months are passing before, justice is served, before certain things happen the way that you think that it should happen for you, but God may have allowed you to not get into that school, to not get that job at that timely fashion, for you to not get promoted this year, or whatever it is that God had deemed was the calendar of events for your life. Don't worry, because God is allowing things to happen for a particular reason and for a certain season. And so if you trust him, if you put your faith in him, then things will work out for your benefit and for your good, right? And so oftentimes God will allow us to go through these seasons of drought, seasons of just turmoil, seasons where you have to really understand it from God's perspective, not from your perspective. And so don't worry that some people are out, lapping you. Some people are doing things quicker than you. Some people are moving up faster than you. Don't worry that things are not happening as quickly as you think it should happen. And if certain things are taking, a much longer time, then it's because God has allowed it, and because it's his will for your life, it's happened. If you've lost money on something, if you've lost property on something, if you've lost a loved one, if you've lost things, that's in God's timing too, because he can, just like with Job, when he went through that turmoil and he lost all those things, he can replenish that. If it's God's will for your life, he can replenish what's been lost. He can do it quickly, and he can bring justice. He can serve whatever it is that was righteous. He can do that very quickly as well. And so just don't be concerned sitting there. Don't think that you have to make a move on your own. Don't think that you have to act out of turn. Don't think that you have to ask somebody or get on, a dating app just because you feel like you're not finding somebody. Don't feel like you have to ask 20 other people for counsel just because you feel like you're not getting what you're supposed to hear. Don't do these panic moves, right? Just trust the Lord, and don't boast about tomorrow. Don't think that you can do this or that when you're just a vapor, like a mist that appears for a while and vanishes. And so in the bigger scheme of things, God sees your life just, 100 years or less, and you will have eternity in heaven with him. And so even if you don't get what you want, even if you do get what you want, it doesn't matter, because if you zoom out and if you see it from God's perspective, and it's hard to see it in that way, but God's grace, his will, his love for your life, it's sufficient. The fact that you just have salvation, the fact that you just have the oxygen that you have to breathe for you to just continue going, whether you have a short life or a long life, whether you get this or that, doesn't matter in the end, because if you zoom out, Jesus is all you need, and you will have eternity in heaven for so many things, and your reward in heaven is great. So take this life not as one where you're like, man, I have to have this done, or this or that. This person is doing more, this person is doing less, and I've got to catch up or not. I've got to accomplish certain things and whatnot. Don't worry about that. A lot of us just panic over time. We panic about the seconds that pass. We panic about the days that have been wasted, the days where you feel like you've done, bad things or just good things or whatever it is. We just get down on ourselves. But God says to have freedom in him, to zoom out and not to be worried, but to allow the will of God to come upon your life as you have that perspective, right? The correct perspective. And so don't be concerned. Don't be concerned about this vapor, this mist that just happens for a little bit. Your life, yeah, it's precious to him, but it's not so critical that you have to be able to get this done or that done to boast in this or that. And so, just step aside, just let go, let your life be surrendered to him, and he will take care of everything. So don't be worried about this. Don't be so angry. Don't be so sad about it. Don't let your emotions get over you because of things that didn't happen in your timing. God controls everything. He'll allow certain things to happen. But at the same time, you need to also zoom out of your life and just take a hard look from a big picture perspective. And so God bless you guys. Be encouraged. And I'll talk to you guys very soon.